What's up everybody, I'm Jason and welcome back to the channel. So this video is getting released a bit out of order. I've got the thing done. I want to get some feedback on it, get it out there so that people can start using it, provide some feedback. So I am jumping the gun, so to speak. This was supposed to come a couple of weeks from now after I did all the videos on rolling shutter testing, but it's done. And so I'm announcing / releasing / talking about it now, and then those videos will be in the following couple of weeks. So what I want to talk today about, or I guess you could almost say announce, is my rolling shutter safe pan speed calculator tool. So the idea is of course, if you are shooting with a rolling shutter, we all know the rolling shutter jello effect. How fast can you pan a camera to not have that become a significant problem? Now, before I get into the details with all of this, I do need to talk about a couple of things because, as I said, while this is an announcement in the sort, this tool is very much in beta. It is not fully complete, it is not fully developed, it is not fully fleshed out. And part of the reason that I'm talking about it and announcing it now is to get some feedback on some of the features that may be of use to other cinematographers that I just didn't think about. So bear that in mind while you're using this if you decide to go play with it. Second of all, due to its early development status, the list of cameras that I have preset support for is very short right now. So the only two cameras that are available in the tool as a preset are the R5 and the R5C. Those are the only cameras that I've fully qualified or quantified all of the rolling shutter performance across the board. I'm hoping to add the Nikon Z9 to the list in the near future, so that should be coming in the coming future, but as things stand now, it's just the R5 and the R5C that are available as presets. Now, that doesn't mean that if you own a Sony or Nikon or Panasonic or Blackmagic or Red or whatever, that you can't use the tool. If you know the active area of the sensor when your camera is recording at whatever resolution you're recording at, and you know the rolling shutter performance of that camera, you can plug all of that information in manually and the tool will do all the calculations for you just as if you were using a preset. Finally, there may be some errors or other issues in the calculations. It's always a possibility, especially for something that hasn't been fully vetted and validated, which is something I will talk about at the end of this video. So let's talk a little bit about what's going on, how this is working, and what the criteria I have used for a safe pan speed is. So as I said, this is calculating how fast you can pan your camera. I'm giving you a number in degrees per second based on the camera's rolling shutter performance and the lens that you have attached to the camera. Now, this is not the same as a cinema safe pan calculator. I mean, it's doing the same type of thing, but it is not using the same calculations. So you may be familiar, if you're into cinematography or you've done the research or whatnot, that there is a rule of thumb in cinematography that says to prevent judder in action when you're panning the camera, you should never pan so that anything moves through the scene in less than 7 seconds. And there's calculators out there. Red has a very good one on their website for their cameras that will give you the time to pan, the degrees per second and the time per angle to pan to meet that rule. This is not doing that. This calculator is purely looking at the effect of rolling shutter jello, or however you want to put it, distortion is the word I keep using, on the pan when you pan. So the numbers that this will come up are going to be much higher than the numbers you would get typically, there may be some instances where it's not, for a cinema safe pan calculator. Finally, the criteria that I used for what is a safe speed to pan at was that I allowed vertical lines to slant by 1 degree. This was chosen entirely arbitrarily. It seems reasonable to me. 1 degree is not a huge amount of slant. It's also something that's happening in very fast panning action, so you're not going to see it terribly obviously, or it shouldn't be terribly obvious, at least not compared to say 5 or 10 degrees or something like that. However, this is something that is subject to revision in the future, is the best way to put it, in part based on feedback and in part based on well, largely feedback and actual putting more of this process to the test. So let's start by taking a look at how this works if you're using one of the preset cameras. So this is the site. Again, the link will be is in the description below. And when you get to the site, you will first be able to choose the camera crop factor and resolution. If you switch the resolution, or if you look in the resolution and don't see the resolution that you're looking for, it may be because I missed it and I'm sorry. Let me know in the comments and I will make sure to add it. Or it may be that the resolution isn't available in that sort of configuration. Again, second section is the resolution. You pick the resolution that you are shooting for or shooting at. This will have some impact on some sensors. For example, on Canons, it changes the active area. In fact, it changes the active area on pretty much everything one way or another, depending on whether you're shooting in a DCI or UHD aspect ratio. Frame rates, you have basically, instead of just every frame rate that the camera could possibly support, I've found the points where frame rates change rolling shutter performance. So you're going to either be looking at, in the case of these Canon cameras, 60 frames per second and slower frame rates, and faster than 60 frames per second frame rates. What you actually see will depend on the actual performance of the camera, so expect that to be different if and when I add more presets. So that will fill out your selections in the first three lines, will fill out the sensor width in millimeters, the sensor height in millimeters, and the rolling shutter time in milliseconds. The final box that you have that you can put information in is the focal length. By default, the calculator assumes 50 millimeters. It was just chosen arbitrarily. Put in whatever focal length you use. As you change these fields, you will see that the rotation or the safe pan angle, which is the last thing in this box, will change to reflect however many degrees per second you can pan with that camera. What about when you have a camera that isn't in the presets for the calculator? Well, that's where you just fill out the information. So you will need to know, again, the active area of the sensor, width and height, as well as the rolling shutter time that the camera has in that configuration. This will likely change depending on whether you're, say, shooting full frame or crop, or if on, for example, some Sony cameras, you're shooting it 4K or 1080p. So you will need to know that information. In this case, you can ignore the full top three drop downs. They have no impact on the calculations whatsoever. Fill out the sensor width and height, fill out your rolling shutter time, and you will see, and again, the focal length that you are working at. And again, you will see that the angle per second number at the bottom will update to reflect what you're telling the calculator your camera is capable of doing. So that brings me to the request for feedback. Obviously, I'd like people to use the calculator if they find it useful. So if you do, I am looking for some feedback on certain aspects of this. First of all is whether or not the design of the interface is simple and easy for you to use. I just put something together pretty quickly and said, well, there's not an awful lot here going on. This should be good. But there might be some things that could be made smoother, so I'm looking to see if there's any real pain points basically, I'm looking to see if there's any real pain points in how it's set up. The second question that I am looking for some feedback on is the 1 degree angle acceptable, or do I need other standards? Small numbers, I could certainly tune the thing much smaller. I could tune the thing larger. 3, would you like to see the pan time for a given angle added? So in other words, if you know that you need to pan 120 degrees for your shot and you don't want more than the error calculated in the calculator, how long does that shot need to pan for given the lens and camera that you're using? Now, the big point that I would like to get some feedback on is some real-world testing. Obviously, these are all estimates. Anything you calculate in a computer is going to be an estimate of the real-world situation. The math, I believe, is correct based on having done the math repeatedly to kind of ensure that that was the case. However, I'm quite limited in what I can do to verify the results. The only two cameras that I have access generally regularly to are my R5 and my R5C. Now, that's not to say that I can't verify that the math is being done correctly with just either one of those cameras. However, the problem is that ultimately I need to have a high-performance, servo-controlled, motion control pan head to be able to make the measurements that I need to do this. I don't have one. The less expensive ones out there, like the ones from Edelkrone, I don't believe can pan at the speeds that I actually need, so that they're not tremendously, or they're kind of a problem. Basically, it comes down to testing this is kind of a problem. Now, all of this is going to be somewhat fuzzy. You know, you're panning a camera, your pan speed is not necessarily going to be perfect because you're not a robot, I'm not a robot, none of us are robots, so unless you've got a robot doing this, the situation is going to be somewhat, you know, nebulous, gray, I should say. So if you find an obvious problem, leave a comment, let me know what you're seeing. You know, if you put in all your information, you know it's correct, you verified it, and I'm calculating for a 1-degree angle, and on your camera you're seeing a 10-degree angle, that's an issue that I need to resolve. So far in the limited testing that I have been able to do with my cameras, sort of just repeatedly trying the same thing over and over and over again, that I have come up with that it seems pretty close, given the errors that are there. So if it's close but not perfect, you know, that's really what you can, the best you can expect for any kind of thing like this. So with that said, again, the link to this is in the description. If you found this tool or this video useful, let me know by hitting that like button. If this kind of thing seems like it's your kind of thing, please consider subscribing if you're not already. If you'd like to directly contribute to the creation of videos like this and more, there is now a tips button down there. Anything is appreciated if that is something that you are inclined to do. And as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.